second shiur of the Corona Days series, in which we're studying Keter Shem Tov, the anthology of short Torah ideas that the Baal Shem Tov taught over the years, and that were collected by Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polner, scattered around his many books, and then edited and put together in this book. Yesterday we studied the very first Torah, which was really a letter written by the Baal Shem Tov himself. It was different from all the others. Today we're going to skip the second Torah, which is quite a complex one, very uncharacteristic of the Baal Shem Tov. It's a kavanah, it's a kind of Kabbalistic intention or something you have in mind for when going to the mikveh. And it's quite complex, very Kabbalistic, has to do with letters and transmutation of letters. And we're going to skip that, and we're going to skip directly to the third Torah. So it's Keter Shem Tov Gimel, number 3. And it's very, very beautiful, very deep, and very much in tune with the atmosphere in which we find ourselves in our Corona days. When I say days, you should imagine the word as D-A-Z-E. We're all dazed. It's days of Corona. We're all dazed by the whole coronavirus craziness going on, and it's quite, I think it's been pointed out by many people that the word Corona means crown. That's the meaning of the word, and crown is of course the highest Sephirah, highest divine emanation in the tree of Sephirot, the tree of life, Etz Chaim. Keter is an illustration, it's like a metaphor for our superconscious. And just like the crown is above our heads, so is the superconscious above our heads. And maybe this whole thing that's going on in the world right now, spreading like crazy, and getting people to really stop the regular movement of their lives and go into their houses and their rooms, and maybe it's all just a big nisayon, a big trial, so we're all connected to our crown again. So this Torah, Keter Shem Tov number 3, is really, really all about this. It's about how to connect to this level of crown. The level of crown has many levels within it. It's actually 3 levels. And they're called 3 heads. Tlat Reishin Shebaketer, the 3 heads that are within the crown. And the highest one of them is called the Unknowable Head. Reisha Delo Yadav Delo Yadav, the head that does not know and that is not known or cannot be known. The short version is the Unknowable Head. And why? Because the crown has to do with things we don't know, we don't understand. They're above our consciousness, above our understanding. So we're going to learn this Torah. Now it's made up of 2 parts. It's 2 interpretations for the same verse. And actually it's more than a verse, it's the way Chazal read that verse. So we're going to start with the verse, and I just want to read it precisely. So the original, anyway, it's a verse, then there's the Chazal interpretation for the verse, and then the Baal Shem Tov gives 2 interpretations for the Chazal saying, and one of them is humorous, and the other is more serious. But we're going to try to also the humorous one understand in a deeper way, and of course trying to find the connection between them. So it all starts with a verse. The verse is in Yirmiyahu, that's the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 16, verse 11. It says, the prophet laments, Ve'oti azavu ve'et torati lo shamaru. They have forsaken me, and they have also abandoned my Torah. They did not observe my Torah. It's a terrible lamentation. Jeremiah is the prophet of the time of the destruction of the first temple and the exile, and his prophecies are mostly negative. And this one has to do with Hashem is saying, he's putting his words in the mouth of the prophet, but Hashem, God is saying, they have forsaken me, and also they did not observe my Torah. And then Chazal, the sages, say something quite amazing, quite incredible about this. They say, Halevai oti azavu ve'torati shamaru. So they change it, right? Instead of saying, they have left me and they did not observe my Torah, then they say, I wish, God says, according to this Perush by Chazal, Hashem says, I wish that they would forsake me as long as they observe my Torah. So the sages open a new way of reading this whole verse, right? Instead of saying, Oti azavu v'torati lo shamaru, as two negative things, they abandoned me and they did not observe my Torah. Chazal is opening up a middle path, a kind of middle ground. Let's say someone is saying, I don't like the Torah anymore. I don't believe in the Torah or in God anymore, and I just want to leave it all. And before I used to both believe in God very deeply, and I used to observe the Torah, and both of them were very, very. I knew that they were important to me, and I knew why I kept them, and that's how my life was. But now there was a crisis of faith. I experienced a crisis of faith, and I had to. And I want to leave both of them. So then, which is just what the prophet laments. But then Chazal open up a different option, different possibility. And they say, hang on, just before you leave, maybe there's another option. You know what, you don't believe in God? Well, sometimes it's tough to believe in God because there aren't any, absolute proofs. Some people believe they think they are, but I don't think so. I think all proofs are, for the existence of God, are, you can always, in any proof, any rational proof, you can always find a hole, and you can always find a counter-argument. And so the sages really say, you know what, don't believe in God. That's okay, don't believe in God. Forget about God. Don't forget about God, but if you're about to leave both God and the Torah, then God himself, according to this interpretation, says, I don't care if they believe in me or not. I'm egoless, so you can leave me. But stay in touch with my Torah, observe my Torah, and if it doesn't have to be either or. Either you have everything or you let go of everything. There's an option, and it's a very Jewish thing to say, because Christianity is really based on a credo, what you believe. There are tenets of faith that you have to hold on to, and that's what makes you a believer. That's what makes you a Christian. And that's how they could have an inquisition trying to make sure that you really believe, to check if you believe, if you believe, you don't believe. But Judaism is not an orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is, ortho means straight, and doxa means a tenet of belief, an opinion, or an idea. So an orthodoxy is that there are things you have to believe in. There are certain truths, or dogmas, or statements that you have to believe in. But Judaism is not really an orthodoxy, it's an orthopraxy. It's there are things you have to do. This is exactly what the sages are saying here. You can practice the Torah, and we're letting go of the question whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. And God himself says so. I don't care if you believe in me, you can let go of me, but observe my Torah. And then the next thing they say after that, in the Talmud, where it's all written, is that they say, once one practices the Torah, and it's not just practice, it's la'asok b'Torah, it's to deal with the Torah, to study the Torah and to practice it. You can even imagine a different kind of ground, which you don't even practice the Torah, but at least you study it. That's also a practical mitzvah, to study the Torah. And the idea is that Hashem believes that if you study the Torah, eventually you'll go back to believing in him also. But if there's a certain space in your life in which you find it hard to believe in God, that's okay. You can still learn the Torah without believing, and you can learn the Torah and go deeper, and gradually you'll arrive at you'll go back. Hashem is confident enough to believe that you will believe in him eventually and in your own good time. But please, he says, at least don't leave my Torah. Okay, so this is the sages, very surprising and radical. We could just have a whole class just about this. Reading, the sages' reading of this very negative verse from Jeremiah. Now we're going to Keter Shem Tov, and here he says, he gives, as I said, two interpretations, one humorous, one serious. And it's very good after Purim. This whole Torah is very, very Purim Dik, Torah. It's very much fits. We're less than a week after Purim, and it's very fitting. And actually, I did teach this in Purim also. I had a Chiddush, but God willing, I'll present it here later on. So, the first humorous one is that the Baal Shem Tov says, who was this sage's idea said for? That please let go of me, but observe my Torah. So in another place, Chazal say that they say which is one verse that captures a great deal, that says a great deal. And they say, Bechol drachecha da'ehu. Know Hashem in everything that you do. And it's very interesting. It's almost the opposite, because then they say, one of the sages says, even when you're doing an avera, when you're doing something that's forbidden, when you're passing an isur, even when you're doing an avera, you should be connected to Hashem. It's almost the opposite. Not almost, it's really the opposite. Of halevayoti azavu v'torati shamaru. Observe. I don't care if you believe in me, but just observe my Torah. Here it's the opposite. It says, remember Hashem, know Hashem all the time, know Hashem at all times. Even when you're doing an avera, at least don't forget Hashem. So that's a beautiful example of how the sages can say two things that are really the opposite, but they're really complementary. So anyway, when the Talmud says, this other source, that Bechol drachecha da'ehu vehu yeyasher orchotecha, that's a continuation of the verse, and Hashem will make straight your paths. Then in one version, it's not in the Talmud, but it is in Ein Yaakov, which is just a compilation of all the stories from the Talmud without the halachic debates. And sometimes there are differences, and here the difference is that a sentence is added, and the added sentence is that, it's quite well known, is that even the thief, when he's stealing, he's praying for God. He's saying, please Hashem, make my theft successful. Help me steal what I need to steal. It's a dangerous, it's a dangerous job being a thief. You're at night, you're climbing the drain pipe of some house, and you're risking your life, and you need to make sure you're not getting caught. So the Torah observes the fact that thieves in those situations, they tend to call out for Hashem. And this is an example of someone who's doing an avera, he's doing a prohibition, but he believes in God, and he performs the verse, Bechol drachecha da'ehu, you should know God in all your ways. So the humorous interpretation of the Baal Shem Tov says, if you see such a thief, or the whole idea of please leave me and observe my Torah, it was said regarding that thief. So that thief that says, well, I'm doing something that's forbidden, but at least I believe in God, then God tells him the opposite. Let go of me, forget about me, and please observe my Torah. Don't steal. The Torah says not to steal. So again, it's only because these two ideas are exactly contradictory and complementary. One says, forget Hashem, observe the Torah. The other says, even if you do prohibitions, remember Hashem. But then the example of the thief, the Baal Shem Tov says, well, the thief, you should look at the first idea, the idea that says, forget about it, stop praying to God. And he says, please don't call me, and don't steal, and just go back to my Torah. So that's the first humorous one. And now we should know, I taught this a few weeks ago when I was in South Africa. You can find it on YouTube. One of the solo of the Parsha Shiurim is that I taught a very beautiful Chassidic idea of 7 lessons to learn from a thief. And so Chassidus likes thieves. And Chassidim love everyone, and they find the good, spark, the holy spark of everyone, and even in thieves. So there's a whole beautiful Chassidic idea of, we learned it from Rav Zusha, of things to learn from a thief. But here, you also have to teach the thief, not just learn from the thief. and he's being told, don't believe in God. It's preferable that you observe the Torah. But this whole thing brings us into the atmosphere of a thief. A thief is someone who goes in the dark, who sneaks into a place and wants to get something or own something in a way that's an indirect way. He's not buying it, he's not working for it, he's trying to find a hidden tunnel and reach a certain place. And this is a good way. Well, we're putting the thief aside, and this was the humorous interpretation. We're putting it aside, but I want to point out the fact that we have this image of a thief going at night, at dark, when he's not seen. One of the things that we learn from a thief is that he's very tzanua, very modest. He's not. He doesn't want to be seen, and he prefers that he's not seen. It's gonna. Yeah. So, going forward with the more serious approach. Now this goes like this. He starts with the sentence, Tachlit hayedi'ah shelo neda. The purpose of knowledge is that we do not know. This is an idiom. It's not original to the Baal Shem Tov. Just gonna put this back again. This is better. The purpose of knowing is that we do not know. Tachlit hayedi'ah shelo neda. Where is this from? This is from a book written by a 14th century Jewish wise man, poet and writer and thinker, whose name was Rabbi Yeda'aya Hapnini. Yeda'aya comes from knowledge, to know, knowing Hashem. And Hapnini is a man of pearls. Maybe his family were pearl merchants. And he was born in France and lived in Spain. And he was a very witty and clever, wise man. And one of his books is called B'chinat Olam, and in this book he says this very beautiful, deep sentence: Tachlit hayedi'ah shelo neda. The purpose of all knowledge, of all knowing, is that we do not know. We have to know and learn and try and gain knowledge, but the purpose, the ultimate purpose of all knowledge, is that we do not know. And in fact, the original phrase, this is how it's phrased here, but the original phrase is Tachlit hayedi'ah sheneda shelo neda. The purpose of all knowledge is that we know that we do not know. Right? It really means that the more you know, many people say this, that the more I know, the more I realize how much I don't know. Right? And so that's the sentence. And it was later put in. It was later, the Baal Shem Tov must have learned of this sentence because it was quoted by the Shlah HaKadosh, the author of Shnei Luchot HaBrit. He was a student of the Arizal, and he was in a way like an intermediate station between the Ari and his Kabbalistic circle in 16th century Tzfat, and Chassidut. And he quoted. Now this Rabbi Yeda'aya Pnini, there's another beautiful book called Mivchar Pninim, a collection of pearls, little sayings. And it was for many years falsely attributed to Rabbi Yeda'aya Pnini, but then it turned out it was written by Shlomo ibn Gavirol. But then in Chassidut, Rabbi Bonim of Pshischa says that, well, that's right, it wasn't written by Rabbi Yeda'aya Pnini, it was written by Shlomo ibn Gavirol, but Shlomo ibn Gavirol was a reincarnation of Rabbi Yeda'aya Pnini. And that's a very interesting way of reconciling traditions with things that are discovered or thought of later. Many people, in the academia, they say that the Zohar wasn't written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it was written by Rabbi Moshe de Leon in the 13th century. And we know that he wrote it, but the tradition says that he received it from. It was transmitted over the years in some way from Rabbi Shimon, but maybe another way to say is that he was a Gilgul of Rabbi Shimon. I don't know. I'm just saying this, that this is just anecdotal. So anyway, Mivchar Pninim is a beautiful book in and of itself, written by Rabbi Shlomo ibn Gavirol, according to Rebunim, reincarnation of Rabbi Yeda'aya Pnini. But this sentence is absolutely his, Rabbi Yeda'aya Pnini's sentence. Tachlit hayedi'ah shelo neda. The purpose of all knowing is that we do not know. So the Baal Shem Tov quotes this, and then he goes on. And he says, however, there are two forms of not knowing, two kinds of not knowing. The first is immediate. You can very easily not know things. It's very easy not to know them. You just don't learn them. And there's this famous joke: what you don't know could fit in an encyclopedia. And it's very easy to not know things. And so it's immediate. But of course, he's talking about something deeper here. There are people who do know things, but then they aspire not to know them. There's an expression that is very much liked in the East, where people who go to ashrams, they like this, which is called unlearning. Unlearning is a kind of unweaving of your knowledge, or a kind of trying to forget what you know. Because in the East, they really favor not knowing, achieving a state of nothingness, or no consciousness, or no unique individual consciousness, and trying to, merge with something higher and deeper and more abstract. And for that, you have to not know things, or disknow, or unknow, or unlearn things. And in a very interesting way, you can say that the Baal Shem Tov is talking about this kind of, maybe there's a kind of dialogue with Buddhism or Oriental systems here, underneath the surface. So he says there are two kinds of not knowing. The first is immediate, that one does not enter into a research, an investigation, and an attempt of knowing. One says, I'm not going to even try. Why? Because it's impossible to know. And he knows from the very beginning it's impossible to know. So this is the first one. The first one says, well, since the purpose of all knowing, as the idiom, the proverb said in the very beginning, the purpose of all knowing is not to know. So I know from the very beginning where we're going. We're going to a state of unknowledge, or not knowing. And so I'm not going to know anything. I'm just going to meditate. In fact, I'm going to work on unlearning everything I've learned. I'm going to go to an ashram, I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to try and forget and unweave all my knowledge, and trying to melt into this state of nothingness. That's the first type. He says, anyway, you're not going to know, so don't try, and in fact, you should try not to know. Right? Because it's impossible to know. Second kind of unknowing or not knowing, שחוקר ודורש עד שידע שאי אפשר לידע. The second type of not knowing is that one does investigate and learn and explore until he knows he does not know. This, of course, goes perfectly along with the original phrasing, as I said, of the sentence. The original sentence is, the purpose of all knowing is that we know that we do not know. Not just that we don't know, but that we know that we do not know. So now we can say the two types of not knowing is that the first one doesn't even try to know, and then he just doesn't know. But now we can say that's not really not knowing, because you only think you don't know. But the second type that learns and explores and goes deeper and investigates, and acquires a very deep, intimate kind of understanding of how much he doesn't know. But of course, along the way, he learns a lot of things. And then he says the difference between the two is, and then he tells a story, or he gives he illustrates a situation. And he says there were once two people who wanted to know the king. And one of them, so there were two people who wanted to know the king. They wanted to meet the king. They heard about the king, and they heard the king was very wise, and of course he rules everything, and they wanted to know him. And one of them entered the palace, and entered all the rooms of the king, and enjoyed the treasures and the hallways and the halls of the king. And then, gradually, over time, he realized it's impossible to know the king. He went to the palace, he went over the books and the paintings and the treasures and the architecture, and he searched for the king, But gradually he became clear to him that the king cannot even be found in his own palace. The palace is too dense, too deep, too many hallways, and the king is hiding in rooms within rooms, and the guards will never let him through. But he's exploring the palace. He's learning indirectly things about the king. That's what we're not being told, but we can imagine that he's learning a lot of things about the king indirectly. And then gradually realizes he cannot know the king. The second one says, well, yeah, of course it's futile to look for the king. Of course, if I'm going to go into the palace, I'm not going to find the king anyway, because the king is something infinite. The king is something too mysterious, too important, too deep a mystery for me to ever discover. So I'm not going to even enter the palace. I'm going to just meditate and unlearn, and just look at the beach and the sunset, and I'll know that I don't know. But again, he doesn't know that he doesn't know. He only thinks he doesn't know. And so the other person that says, the first one, the one who doesn't go in, he says, well, since I cannot know the king, I'm not even going to try. He doesn't enter the palace, doesn't go through the different rooms, and he tries to not know immediately, but he doesn't succeed. And then it says, this, now it goes back to the verse we started, Halevai, according to the way Chazal read it, Halevai oti azavu v'torati shamaru, I wish they would forsake me and forget about me, but observe my Torah. Then he says, I wish that they would forget me or leave me, that is, abandon hope of fully understanding who I am. That's how the Baal Shem Tov is reading this. Hashem is saying, Halevai oti azavu, I wish they would reach the conclusion that I am unknowable through observing and learning my Torah. Halevai oti azavu mitoch shetorati shamaru, I wish they would leave me through and by virtue of observing or learning or trying to figure my Torah out. So this is beautiful. Now we understand the whole story. The whole story is that the king is, of course, Hashem, is God, and the palace is the Torah. The palace is all the different stories and ideas and commandments and halachic details and all the infinite ocean of Torah details. And the person who says, I cannot know God, he's saying there's no point in learning the Torah, observing the Torah in any way, because the whole point is getting to know God, and it's impossible to know God, so there's no point in trying. But the second person is saying, well, that's right. I also believe that Hashem is unknowable, but I want to know that I cannot know Hashem. It's very different, knowing that I don't know Hashem. And that's what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to go into His palace. The Torah is the palace, and the different rooms and treasures and books, that's all the details within the big Jewish library. And Hashem is asking us, please go deeper and deeper and realize this. This is the end of, we finished reading. That's the end of Keter Shem Tov number 3. Now, what we have in the background here is really, we're talking about 2 Sefirot within the Sephirotic tree, within the tree of knowledge, the tree of life, the tree of Sefirot. So as we said in the beginning, the first Sephirah is crown, right? The coronavirus Sephirah. Sorry. I don't have coronavirus, don't worry. And it doesn't go through the screen anyway. So the one is Keter, and Keter is super conscious. It's above knowledge, above consciousness. And the second Sephirah that's really connected to it is Dat. Dat is the second Sephirah that's in the central line. Where the first 4 Sephirot are Keter, and then on the right hand side that would be Chokhmah, wisdom, and then there's Binah, understanding, and then there's Da'at, knowledge. And Chokhmah and Binah, the 2 types of intellect, they comprise the intellectual level. But Keter and Da'at are different. One of them is something that's above the head, and the other one is lower than the head. It connects the head with the heart. And that it means knowledge, right? Tachlit hayedi'ah, the purpose of all knowledge, is to get to the place of not knowing, unknowing, above knowledge, which is Keter. And what the first person is trying to do, the one who says it's impossible to know Hashem, he's trying to get to the Keter directly. And that's very similar to, there's another story, very famous story about Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah, who was looking for a certain city, and he arrived at a crossroads. There was a child there, and he asked the child which road leads to the city, and the child told him, this is the short and long path, and this is the long and short path. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah immediately went for the short and long path, and it was very direct, but it arrived at the orchards and gardens surrounding the city. He couldn't get into the city. It started out short, but then it ends up being very long, maybe even impossible to traverse. So he came back and he told the child, but you told me this was a short road. He told him, I told you it's a short and long road. First it's short, then it's long. It goes directly, but it only gets to the outside of the city, to the outside gardens. If you go in the indirect way, you'll get to the inside of the city, you'll get to the gate. And the idea is that the person going back to this, that the person not going into the palace and trying to go directly to the Keter doesn't reach the Keter at all. He reaches a very external, superficial kind of experience, which is the experience of he's really totally stuck still within himself, within his ego, and he thinks he's transcending his ego, but he's not transcending anything, because he hasn't really never came out of himself. He's just trying to connect directly to his own soul root. But the thing is that you can never know when what you're looking for is yourself. Is you're looking for your own superconscious, or looking for something that's above you, but you're looking within you, then you're still locked up in your own. You're only in the outside gardens or orchards. You don't know that you don't know. You haven't really got out of yourself in any way. But the person who takes the longer route, that's the longer route in this case, goes through the palace, goes through learning a lot of Torah. And then the more you learn, the more you indirectly do understand things about the king. You're not understanding the essence of the king, because that's infinite. But you're getting to know you end up much richer, much more profound. You have so much knowledge, so many ideals and jewels and beautiful paintings and beautiful books that you found in the palace library. So the king himself, the ultimate essence of the king, is unknowable. But the more you learn, the more you achieve a true knowledge, or a true connection to how much Hashem is infinite. And you get this experience when you learn Torah, when you're learning, and you're constantly discovering more and more details and more incredible, nooks and crannies and things about it, then a far deeper kind of realization of just how infinite Hashem's wisdom is, and that you can never fathom it. You get that feeling in a far deeper and more comprehensive and more intimate way, you can say, than just trying to, not learn or unlearn. And now, in a way, this connects to the thief. We can imagine this person who goes into the palace and is trying to go over all the treasures of the king. It's a bit like a thief. Sounds like a thief. And maybe we're told that, well, we can see this in two ways. We can say that the negative type, the one who says there's no point in going into the palace, I'm just going to meditate and connect to this higher state of unknowing, he's the thief in a negative kind of way. He's trying to steal directly this very lofty realization of not knowing. But the other way of understanding this is that we're the thieves, the people. We're forgetting about Hashem, but we want to get as much of the Torah as we can. I mean, we're realizing we're not going to know Hashem truly but at least we'll gain some wisdom, some treasures, some amazing ideas, and and also tips for life. It's not just ideas; it's a lot of commandments. It's mitzvot. It's a way of life. So this is the Torah of Keter Shem Tov Gimel, and now we can add something. This is something I thought of in Purim. So as we said, the point of da'at, of all knowledge, is to get to Keter, and this is actually, before we go to the Purim idea, I'll just add something to explain this in a better way. Is that Rabbi Nachman always said that when you're reaching a new level of knowledge, there's a moment in which you don't know anything. And he said this regarding coming from outside of Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, that when you come in you have to forget everything. And generally speaking, when you're going from one world to a higher world, then you're going from the top level of one realm to the lowest level of another realm. And because, although you're going up, you should experience a feeling of falling, because from being in the top level of one thing, you're in the most bottom level of another thing. And it's just like when you're, in some school systems, you finish one school when you're in the 8th grade, and you start a second school when you're in the 9th grade, or you finish at the 6th, and then you start at the 7th. But the idea is that you transition in one moment, in one summer, you transition from being the oldest kid in school to being the youngest kid in school, or belonging to the youngest age group. And so you came up one class, but the feeling is that suddenly you're small, you're little. There are everyone is bigger than you are. And the idea is here that this experience of falling, which isn't really falling, you're going upwards, is this feeling of not knowing. And so you're learning and you're growing, but then you don't know anymore. And we know the same thing about the concept of Sha'ar Hanun, the 50th gate of understanding. There are 49 gates of understanding that are within the realm of understanding. But then the 50th gate of understanding really belongs to a realm of not understanding, of not knowing. And it can only be reached if you go through all the 49 gates. You have to go through 49 gates of knowing or understanding in order to get to the point of not understanding, of transcending your knowledge. Okay, now, so all this we need a lot of da'at, a lot of knowledge in order to truly reach Keter, right? The state of not knowing. However, the whole point of being connected to the Keter is not that we're the opposite of this meditation type who wants to run away from the world. We want to be in the world, engaged, and we want to rectify the world. So the whole point of going to the Keter is then that this transcendental, super rational light can sort of seep in and filter into our consciousness. We want to be conscious or experience or live this kind of what is called the surrounding lights, the lights of unknowing, the lights of the Keter. So we can say that the original sentence of Rabbi Yedaya Pnimi was the purpose of all knowing is that we do not know. But now we can add something else. We can say the purpose of all not knowing is knowing. That's where it's a two-way street. The purpose of all knowledge, everything we learn, is just to realize how much we don't understand anything, and Hashem is so infinite. But now we have to take this kind of knowledge. Like I said, now you know that you don't know, right? So it's a kind of knowledge. And we want to take this knowledge of how much we don't know and bring it down into our hearts and minds and really experience it. So the purpose of all not knowing is that we know. And just like the original phrase was not just the purpose of knowing is not to know, the original phrase was the purpose of all knowing is that we know that we don't know. So taking that back into this new kind of idea that I'm proposing is that the purpose of not knowing is that we don't know that we know. Meaning, the kind of, when we're going back from Keter to Dat, from crown to knowledge, from superconscious to conscious and into our hearts and our bodies, the kind of knowledge we arrived at, the knowledge that we don't know, it's a different kind of knowledge. It's not a knowledge that we hold on to, that we can explain and we know we have it for sure and it's certain. It's a different kind of knowledge. It's something that we don't know that we know. We know it, but we don't know that we know it. It's like people talking about faith, right? Do you believe in God? Yes. Tell me, what do you mean by you? Do you know that a God exists? Do you know that? He says, no, I don't know, but I believe. But what is belief? Is it knowledge? It's a kind of knowledge. It's not a knowledge that I can tell you, I can describe it to you, or explain it to you, or prove it to you, or transmit it to you. It's not contagious. Well, maybe it is a little bit contagious, but it's contagious not in a way that I can transmit it verbally and rationally. It's something that I know, but I don't really know how I know it. And I'm not really sure of what exactly it is that I know. So the purpose of all knowing is that we don't know. That we know that we don't know. And the purpose of all not knowing is that we again know this unknowing, but it's a different kind of knowledge. Now we know it in a way that we don't know that we know it, or we don't know how we know it. And we don't know exactly what it means, but we do know it. It's within us, it's innate. And the idea here is that the point of all the conscious work that we're doing, serving Hashem and learning Torah, is that we connect to the superconscious. But the point of the superconscious is that it becomes conscious also. The Keter is also called mazal. Mazal, well, it usually translated as luck, but mazal means to drip liquid, nozel. Mazal is this again, like super rational energy, but it's supposed to drip, droplets of inspiration and faith and consciousness into our head and into our heart. So that's our share for today, and may we all, use this coronavirus days with the YS and with the ZE in order to really try and learn as much as we can, learn a lot of Torah, use all the time that we now have in our homes, and reconnect to the Keter, to the crown, remember the crown, and then don the crown, have the crown, feel it, make it shine over our heads, make it shine, and make it, spread a kind of aura, a kind of light that is visible all around us, not just above our head, but in every words that we say, and in the way we learn, and in the way we treat other people, and in the way we look at the world and try to make sense of it. And we have to look at the world and see what's going on, and take all the precautions we need to take, but constantly also remember there's something deeper, more hidden going on here. There's a hidden level. You see this picture behind me, you see this Chassidim that are flying above this very dirty, poor kind of Eastern European town, and you have this someone who's drunk over here. He's not knowing. Actually, that's beautiful. That's really two types of not knowing, right? So the one who drinks over here, that's the one who says, well, since you can't know Hashem, I'm not going to try, I'm just going to drink, right? Some people go to meditate in an ashram, and some people, they go to drink alcohol. But these Chassidim over here, they sit in the chariot, and they also have a little bit of mashke, a little bit. They're not getting totally drunk, but they're drinking a little bit of mashke, and they're flying over the city, and they try and reach the state of knowing that they do not know, as opposed to this guy down here, who just doesn't know anything. If you like this shiurim, please press the like button under the YouTube video, and also press the subscribe button to make sure you become subscribers for the video. It really helps the channel grow. And you also have to click the bell button, then you get notified if there's a new video that I post. And if you really like those shiurim and you want to help me get them off the ground, then please consider becoming my supporter on Patreon. Patreon is a platform that helps independent teachers and creators do their thing, because we're not getting paid for this. So please consider it. Really, really, really helps. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow.